When Pastor Nelson woke up that morning, he was filled with a sense of achievement. Last night, he had finished his task of sleeping with a female dead body every full moon. He had met the unsettling obligation he had accepted in his quest for the success of his ministry and more powers. The disturbing ritual he performed in secret, one he buried deep behind the confident smile he wore each day as the senior pastor of Salem's town's largest evangelical church. That day happened to be a Sunday, so he prepared for church service. He prepared himself for church by donning his robe and making sure his sermon notes were prepared, completely rehearsed and containing all the key scriptures on healing and sowing seeds. The congregation loved him now. The healing services, the prophecies, the miracles, these were what the people came for. They flooded Salem with the idea that his church was a place for divine encounters, a place that when you go, you are sure to get your miracles. He glanced in the mirror, straightening his collar, the edges of his mouth lifting in satisfaction as he admired his reflection. He had transformed the church from near ruin to unprecedented heights of success, creating programs that aired on television and radio, and building a school and hospital. Many people thought the source of his wealth lay in the good religious foundations set up by his parents. They mostly attributed the massive success of the church to the fact that he took over his family church and made it bigger after the death of his father 5 years ago. Pastor Nelson was the second child, but the only son of Mr. and Mrs. Obika. They were the head pastors of one of the biggest evangelical churches in the town of Salem. People knew them and accorded them with the respect, oftentimes calling them mommy and daddy for their impactful roles in shaping and supporting the lives of their members and non-members alike through their foundation and charitable works in the community. Mr. Obika had died from a mild stroke while in his mid-50s, leaving behind his wife and 2 children who were Nelson and his sister Amanda. People were initially doubtful if Nelson could handle the responsibility of running the church. They wondered if he was really called by God, if God could use someone like him. He had a reputation for being a spoiled child who, despite the efforts and spiritual guidance of his parents, was very rebellious in his youth. He had multiple fights with people and was arrested multiple times by the police, and each time had to be bailed out by his parents. On one of those times, he met Jones, a rebellious youth, while in detention, and they became best of friends. He was known for being rude, abnormally loud, and immature to the needs and feelings of others. It did not help that he had gotten 2 young ladies in the church pregnant before he turned 25. After his father's death, many people were of the opinion that the church would be better run by his number 2, who was Pastor David Oga. Pastor David, as he was fondly called, was a man who was loved by most of the members for his kindness and thoughtfulness. He was a prayerful pastor, and those who came in contact with him always had good things to say. Mr. Obika, in a bid to preserve his legacy at the expense of the church, made his son Nelson the next senior pastor. This decision had an instant impact in the church. David just quietly left the church and started his own. Most of the members complained, saying that a church was not a family business. They were sure that Nelson was not spiritually sound, so why was he appointed as the lead pastor, they thought to themselves. This led more than half the church members to leave the church. They went to Mr. David's new church as soon as it was clear that Nelson was to take charge. When Nelson started to preach, it was to a church filled with almost empty chairs, and the members that did show up only came out of respect to his parents or those who had a role in the church administration. But all in all, the services were rather a bland and boring experience. Nelson lacked the Bible knowledge or the ability to connect with people, as he had always had issues listening to other people's opinions, even on matters such as this, where he did not know how to turn the sad trend of members leaving the church. Faced with a tough assignment as to how he was to grow the church, he went to his longtime friend Jones, who was now into real estate. Jones had a reputation for being a shrewd and wicked businessman who did anything possible to always come out on top in every business deal. As they sat down speaking about the church issues, Jones told him that the only way to revive the church was if he started doing miracles and giving prophecies. As soon as he said it, they both burst into hysterical laughter, almost falling off their chairs. Then Nelson asked sarcastically, "If I could, I would have done so already. Even my father, as mighty as he was when he was alive, did not do miracles. You know it is not something every pastor can do." Jones proceeded to tell him that was the surest way for him to grow and get the members he wanted. Jones told him that if he wanted to start doing miracles, he knew an old man who could help, but it was not going to be easy. He told Nelson that when he had decided if he really wanted to, he should let him know anytime. They proceeded to enjoy themselves as Jones had arranged for some girls. For the next 5 months, things did not improve, and more members left the church, mostly to Mr. David's church, which made him angry. He vowed to do anything to return things to how they were under his father, or even better. In his desperation to prove to the world that he was not a failure, he reached out to his friend Jones. "Jones, I am ready," he said. "Please, make the necessary arrangements for us to see the old man." On the appointed day, they embarked on the journey to see Jones' spiritual father. After driving for 3 hours, they arrived at the end of an old road. They parked their car and then trekking the rest of the way, which took almost 45 minutes. The house, which was a rather dilapidated mud-built bungalow house, which was constructed right at the end of a footpath which opened up into a thick forest. The man welcomed them and offered them some cola nuts. When they had rested a bit, they got down to business. The old man already knew Jones, so he gestured towards him to introduce his friend. Jones gave Nelson a nod, and Nelson proceeded to explain what brought him there. He said he was ready to comply to any condition as long as his wish was granted. The old man nodded attentively and said in a stern voice that the power to perform miracles would involve ancient spirits, and binding them to him was going to require a sacrifice of blood of one of his children, or he could use himself instead and have the spirit live inside him. After the death of his father, Nelson was forced to marry one of the women who he had gotten pregnant before. This was one of his conditions to make him take over the church. So he was living with one of his children while the other one was living with his mother. Having been looked at as a disappointment all his life, his children were probably his biggest achievement up to that point. After a while, he told the man that he was going to use himself instead, since he already had children. The old man proceeded to gather all the required materials to be used in the ritual sacrifice, which was going to last for a period of 7 days. During the ritual, he was cut with razors and special herbs were rubbed into it. He was given a small baby tortoise to swallow. The old man told him that the power he sought would be given by a spirit that lived in tortoises. He was told that he had to sleep with a dead female corpse every full moon to appease the spirit, or it would consume him till he goes mad. After a couple of days, they returned to the town of Salem. Jones told him that he had also made the choice to use himself and that he was given the same conditions. He assured him not to panic, that he already had the necessary arrangements for the task that was given. Later that week, he was introduced by his friend Jones to the owner of the mortuary he used for his own sacrifice. They discussed with the owner, a man called Abel, who was to make the necessary arrangements for them to have sex with 2-day-old female corpse on the full moon. 2 weeks passed and it was time for the ritual as he started to feel the power in the tortoise trying to overcome him. He called his friend Jones, who told him to come to his house so that they would go to see Mr. Abel, who had made the necessary arrangements. When they got there, they entered and found the bodies. After letting them in, Mr. Abel left them with the keys and went home. Before leaving, he told them not to take anything from there. They were to do what they had come for and leave. When Mr. Nelson got home, he started to witness exponential growth in the church. He began to hold powerful crusades where he performed miracles. In one of those early crusades, a woman came out from the back saying that her father has not been able to walk for the past 17 years. She came crying and pleading with Pastor Nelson to heal her father and make him walk. This was the first time he was in this situation, but he felt this was the right time to show the power he felt after what was now months after he performed multiple full moon rituals. The man who was on a wheelchair was brought forward, and Pastor Nelson proceeded to say some words of prayer in a very dramatic manner, almost theatrical. Then he held the hands of the man and proceeded to raise him up. The man staggered forward and backwards while being supported by Mr. Nelson. Using the power of the tortoise inside him, he was able to temporarily heal the man, and everyone could see the man walk. Those present went home and told everyone what they had witnessed that day, and more members came pouring into the church. He was careful not to open new branches and maintained just the one, but he built schools and hospitals in multiple locations within the state. 7 years had passed since Pastor Nelson had acquired his mysterious power, and everything started to look good for him. His church was doing fine. He had acquired more properties, built a university, and many hospitals. All this contributed to his fame and that of the church, but all that was about to change. Watch out for the next episode as the mighty Pastor Nelson confesses on live TV.